sometimes it feels like Donald Trump gets like a super wide berth for the cray-cray, and Democratic candidates, or whether it's Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, are judged from every nuance, because people are just assuming they're sane, which is legitimate. But then you should judge him on the same standard, like just factoring in that he's crazy and people are bored with crazy.
Hello and welcome to the Bulwark Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Miller. I'm just so tickled to be here today with Neera Tanden. She's the domestic policy advisor to President Biden, a fellow veteran of the great Twitter wars of 2016. And this is our first time on the Bulwark Podcast. How you doing, Neera?
I'm great, but I just really want to be clear that I'm a very, very, very reformed tweeter.
I know. We're going to be talking about that. You put in the work though. That's what I said, a veteran. You're a veteran. I'm on active duty. You're doing real serious policy work at the White House. And I want to talk to you about President Biden's Investing in America tour and what's happening this week and how that relates to the campaign and the accomplishments. But before we do that, we have to have one flash from the past. Let's take a listen to Trevor Noah talking about Neera Tanden's confirmation hearing in 20.
Oh man!
Let's listen.
You called Leader McConnell Moscow Mitch and Voldemort, and on and on. There are still 9 pages of tweets about Senator Ted Cruz, for example.
There's 9 pages left of Ted Cruz tweets. Neera Tanden, you were denied that role as Officer of Management at the Office of Management and Budget by Republican senators who are upset with your tweets. Many, almost all of them, I guess, except Mitt, are now supporting Donald Trump for president this time. Do you have any feedback to the senators that voted you down?
I would say that was a long time ago. And, at the time, I found it somewhat perplexing that they were judging and reading my tweets very clearly and closely, when perhaps in previous moments they hadn't read tweets that much. But I would say over the last couple of years, I've enjoyed working with many of these senators on issues that where we can focus on helping the American people. And, that's like all in the past for me. I'm very happy where I am at the Domestic Policy Council. It's kind of where my heart is. So, all is well that ends well.
All is well that ends well. But I mean, really? They're kind of over Donald Trump this time. After saying Neera Tanden couldn't run the Office of Management and Budget, they're going to say Donald Trump can be president. I mean, we're really doing this, Lindsey Graham, Rob Portman.
If people want to look at that and think it's kind of odd that people who hadn't seen tweets for 3 years discovered tweets all of a sudden when they were mine, and of course, I hadn't said anything as harsh about some of these senators, the person that is the nominee today. But, again, I'm in a role where I am just happy to serve and I've been, again, happy to let all of that be in the past.
Wow, you're just maybe a bigger person than me, Neera. That's all I got to say. I don't know. I just say we might
person than you, Tim.
We might be having a dramatic reading of the other 9 pages of Ted Cruz tweets at the end of the podcast. We'll see. All right, let's do business. So, President Biden is out starting this Investing in America tour. On he started. He'll be out in the campaign trail later this week. Just talk about the top lines of that and the Investing in America, what what the big achievements are, particularly stuff you think are going to be most resonant out in those Midwestern states where he's going to be campaigning or where he's going to be having events this week.
Yeah, so Investing in America really signifies the legislation the president passed, the infrastructure bill, the Chips and Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the investments made in all across the country, blue states and red states, urban, rural, suburban communities. The president believes he's a president for all Americans. So he's going to highlight the impact on all Americans everywhere, family farms. He'll be making an announcement around solar farms and investments in energy that help family farms. But this is just signifies the kind of investments overall he's made. We have 800,000 manufacturing jobs during the course of this administration. We do see in the last couple of weeks that people are, increasingly optimistic. It's still, still real challenges, but there is increasing optimism around the economy. And so I think the president is going to outline, a key foundation of this administration, which has been to create jobs for people everywhere in every community to ensure no community is left behind. And I think that is a kind of a stark contrast from perhaps what you might see others in the political system talk about these days, because he does believe that he should have policies for people who didn't vote for him, and you'll see that outlined. And of course, we're proud of the investments that we've made, and really believe that investing in these jobs, many of them union jobs, 80% of the Invest in America jobs are for people who don't have a college degree. These are important policies, but also really signify an inclusive administration that, again, wants to lead the whole country.
Yeah, I mean, there's I was talking to Senator Schatz on the pod about this yesterday. And so on the one hand, you have this stark contrast between the infrastructure half decade that never yielded any infrastructure with Donald Trump, and what we've seen with chips, with the IRA, and the investments going into these communities, including red communities, including here in Louisiana. I mentioned that to my Republican friends in Louisiana from time to time. On the other hand, we also talked there's, obviously there's delays, there's permitting issues, there's work still to be done. That the rural broadband, maybe haven't seen the results that had thought about initially. So how do you kind of think about that, and what's the work left to do on getting this stuff implemented?
Well, implementation is a huge issue, and I do think that the president has been focused on ensuring that we don't just pass the bills, but implement them well. And there are important things like speeding up building. We have a big housing agenda, speeding up building permits. We just announced something. We just announced a set of policies on that a few weeks ago. It's important not to just pass the legislation and put the money out there, but to create the infrastructure for it. And we have found in some places that we need to address roadblocks. And so that's why didn't just put on money for housing or have a big housing agenda, but we have to take the sort of additional actions around speeding up building permits. And some of these issues are relatively nonpartisan, and we should be able to address them.
Let's talk about the vice president. I'm curious. Obviously she's been a partner with the president on a lot of what you guys have been doing over there, but you have a unique seat there as a domestic policy advisor. So I'm wondering, what did you see firsthand as far as things that she was particularly focused on, or things you got to work together on? Maybe there's an anecdote or story, something people might not know about her work on projects you've been involved in over the last few years.
Yeah. So, now that you've rehashed all my wonderful OMB nomination issues, I'm reminded of one when I was during transition, when I was OMB nominee. We were hashing out the economic plans of the president and vice president. And, she was very, very focused. Thematically, she really focuses on the impact on real people. I know that sounds like everybody does that, but I've worked for political leaders who really think about, what is the macroeconomic impact of something. And while us wonks can focus on that, she was particularly focused on, how was money getting into people's hands quickly? How would they access the money? She was very practical and thinking through the real direct consequence of policy on people's lives. And of course, she's been a significant champion of issues like childcare, paid leave, and has a particular perspective on those issues. It was the case that the women in the economic team and the vice president really led the charge for including those proposals. So, my experience with her, I've worked with her on voting rights issues, on civil rights issues, on AI issues. And my experience with her is that she's really kind of a practical leader. She's very focused again on, how do the policy decisions we make in Washington affect actual families? I think because she was an AG, she was a prosecutor, she really translates. I think she really sees how Washington can get far removed, how like you can lose sight of the actual impact of things, and really pushed us pretty hard on those issues. And again, you can pass a bill, but she'd want to know when it was going to get implemented. Which is a kind of baseline questions, but sometimes a lot of political leaders don't ask like questions like that. They really will just sort of take it at face value, that it will affect people eventually. So that's been my experience with her. It's like really just focused on how how we're making progress for people and who can be cynical about the impact of things and really do rely on these programs or policies.
Have you just kind of thinking about that and her style, and obviously you'd worked so closely with Secretary Clinton and having been an advisor to her, and just kind of thinking about like the challenges like of her now doing this thing again about being a woman leader and having to do the opportunities but also the challenges that deal with that. I wonder if has anything been learned from that? Did you have any advice for her on that? Or is there any perspective you have about kind of how she's been doing now, through the context of what y'all went through in 2016?
Well, I feel like what's excellent about this podcast is that I'm reliving every wonderful memory I have. Is it 2016?
I have a list of some of your childhood traumas here, and so hopefully we're going to get to that if you don't stall too much on these.
So we go from OMB nomination to the 2016 election, which was fun in every way.
When you start a podcast, you can interview me about Jeb. You can interview me about,
that's a motivation. Now I'm going to start a podcast just to do that. So look, I really did feel firsthand. I worked for Hillary for a very long time, and I worked for her in the 2008 campaign. I worked for her in 2000 when she ran for Senate. I worked for her. I was an advisor to the campaign in 2016, and I mean, in that very long journey, I do feel that women candidates are judged very differently. And, in a way, like we all have sort of unconscious biases. And I just think some of those, there's just ways in which, I think people traditionally think of leaders and then how they see women. And it's super complicated. It's not, just everyone is misogynist or something, but I just think it is hard. These are very hard metrics. Yeah. Having said that, I think that the vice president, Kamala, is handling it really well. She's talking about what she would do as a leader. She's not shying away from the fact that she's kind of history making and has left it to other people. Obviously, Hillary talked about her in the convention, in her convention speech, as historic. But obviously, everyone can see the change that she would bring and who she is, kind of on face value. So I think it's smart that she's focused on these issues. And I think also people kind of forget Hillary was really kind of vilified as a kind of an establishment person, or attacked. I shouldn't say vilified, attacked as super establishment. So I think, there are reasons for her to emphasize how different it would be to have a woman leader. And so I sort of think that this is just a different time. I also think we lived through, the Democratic Party lived through 2016 and is really just a lot more on vigilant about kind of sexist attacks and other attacks. And I think she's handled the overtly sexist and racist attacks she's gotten from, the other side from really well.
Yeah, I agree. Like the brush off with Dano was pretty good. It's only going to get more challenging from here, though, having to be next to him on stage. Yeah.
I don't know. He seems really freaked out by her. So I don't know. He might just melt down in person.
Stalking
Because, you know,
around
he
the stage
is,
is maybe
when, I mean, like, he is a lot better looking than her. So, I mean, that's just going to be hard for him to not just naturally feel how much better looking he is.
yeah. And he's talking
Because
looks quite a bit. He's thinking
he's
about
like,
those looks a lot.
he's definitely like talking about his looks relative to her looks. And it was kind of a weird thing to focus on. So who knows? Maybe she will. Maybe I'm looking forward to the debate. I personally, I mean, it's very anxiety producing, these debates, but I'm looking forward to it.
Ever wonder what's really driving political trends and policy decisions? Check out the Science of Politics podcast from the Niskanen Center. This bi-weekly show features engaging conversations with up-and-coming political scientists and explores the latest research on elections, public opinion, and policy. From the impact of social media on voting behavior to the nuances of legislative decision-making, the Science of Politics breaks down complex political phenomena into accessible, thought-provoking discussions. Whether you're working in politics or simply want to understand the forces shaping our political landscape, this podcast offers fresh perspectives that go beyond the headlines. Subscribe to the Science of Politics wherever you get your podcasts and join a community of listeners passionate about understanding the forces shaping our political landscape. It's time to bring more science to your politics. The other side of her history making, I'm just curious if you have any insight on. I mean, obviously she's biracial, and thanks to Donald Trump's discussion about how she turned black, there's been, I guess, some commentary on how, you know, her mother's of South Asian descent, as you are. I wonder if there's like, I don't know, is there like an excitement in that community at all? Are there
Oh,
other
yeah.
challenges,
Yeah.
opportunities? Any perspective on that?
Yeah. I mean, there's incredible enthusiasm. And, you know, I think people in the South Asian community can also actually see that a person can be both South Asian and Black. I don't know. It's weird. It's a concept. But yeah, there's incredible excitement. And look, I just think it's like a fascinating, you know, it's a fascinating moment. Like,
Very,
yeah, and I thought Kamala, the vice president did a fantastic job in the debate of, not the debate, in her Democratic convention speech, where she really actually talked about her full biography as both incredibly different from a traditional president, right? She's the daughter of immigrants. Both her parents are immigrants. Her mother, you know, made this long journey to America to be able to have a full career in science research and breast cancer research. And at the same time, you know, they struggled, and you know, she lived in a very working class community in Oakland. And I mean, I just thought that the way she weaved together the kind of what some people would think of as you know, extraordinary or unusual, I should say, background to, you know, kind of the basic story of America. I thought I really resonated with me. But also, you know, I think like having a president who's had that experience. I've talked to the vice president in the past about strong Indian moms and you know, sometimes how they can use healthy competition with other people to make sure you do better. And you know, I mean, her mom just does seem like a kind of very, you know, just a strong immigrant mom who, you know, journeyed a very far way to, you know, have a dream, which I think is kind of a cornerstone principle for you know, in this great crazy country.
It was a cornerstone principle until Donald Trump and JD Vance were deciding one of the native
will be a cornerstone principle again, because we're not going to let them define what America or American is.
We're not going back. I noticed that you pointed out recently that there's this asymmetry in the media sometimes, and how Donald Trump admitted on Fox News over Labor Day weekend that he believed that he had every right to try to interfere with the election. A lot of people weren't talking about that. So we're in the media now, so we should talk. It is insane. Like the whole thing, there's like the media criticism element of this, which is noteworthy, but there's also just the straight outrage of it all. There is the
Yeah.
maybe have gotten too desensitized to how insane something like that admission like that is.
I mean, my I have to say, I find it really mind-boggling, and I find it particularly mind-boggling. I think I note that you read one of my tweets, but I do want to say I'm overall a very reformed tweeter. I feel like we had a lot of post 2016 analysis about how the media mishandled covering Trump and didn't take him seriously or literally, and then, felt all this regret during his presidency when he did all these things that were pretty harmful. And now we have a, kind of similar thing, which is like, there's just so much he does that it feels to me that there's some editorial decision that we can't cover everything, because then it would feel very out of balance. Because I don't know if in the middle of her interview with Dana Bash, if Kamala Harris had said, if I win, I get to have an insurrection, or an insurrection would be justified, which is a little bit what he was
jail my
saying.
enemies. I'm thinking about jailing my political opponents.
I feel like we would be talking about it for like 7 days straight, right? And I mean, I think this is the thing. Like, sometimes it feels like Donald Trump gets like a super wide berth for the cray-cray, and Democratic candidates, or whether it's Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, are judged from every nuance, because people are just assuming they're sane, which is legitimate. But then you should judge him on the same standard, like just factoring in that he's crazy and people are bored with crazy. Doesn't seem to me to be the right approach, when what it ends up doing is, he basically adopts a strategy, which is to say cray all the time, because you cannot actually hold on to any particular cray. And having been played by him for 8 years, or I don't know, played may be tough, having been possibly manipulated by his strategy, I would just wonder if people are not thinking they should stop.
Yeah. No, we're on the same page. There's so much of it, right, that you could grab onto anything. You grabbed onto the admitting he interfered in the election with Mark Levin. I was making the same point via his Truth Social tweets about how we need military tribunals and all this sorts of stuff, like pictures of all of his opponents in jail and in orange jumpsuits. I'm like, imagine if Kamala just randomly one morning started tweeting about how after she gets in, she's going to have military tribunals targeting Donald Trump. I feel like that would have been leading the
everyone would be like, drop the race right now. Right. I mean, it's just, I think this is the thing that's weird. It's like, they don't know how to cover him, so they just don't. It's like it feels to me, and then they learn to cover when he actually is in office doing the terrible things. So it strikes me like, on the 4th time, maybe they should figure out the rules.
All right. Last question for you. JD Vance has had a series of comments lately, some of them about how women who have passed the biological period where it was possible to have children are miserable. Obviously, he's had his comments about childless cat ladies. I'm asking you for this 1 minute to embody the 2015 Neera that sent 9 pages of tweets about Ted Cruz. What do you think, 2015 Neera, about JD Vance's thoughts on miserable women?
I something really witty to say here. I feel like I've been built up into some crazy tweeter, but I mean, I kind of personally think when you read all this, like, fundamentally, there is a weird, extreme world vision here where women's equality is just a direct threat to men's manhood. And I mean, this is what he's channeling. And I fundamentally think that is like super backwards and kind of crazy, but also just, I think women should recognize that what is really driving this group crazy is the fundamental equality of women. and vote accordingly.
It's a good way to leave it. The director, Neera Tanden, domestic policy advisor to President Biden, previously staff secretary at the White House, served in the Obama and Clinton administrations. Thank you for coming by the Bulwark podcast. I hope to see you in person soon.
I hope so much I don't regret this.
You won't. People love it. You'll be getting stopped in Whole Foods